desert where the shadows creep. Sebastian and Eric dig graves real deep. Arizona whispers on the midnight air. Ghosts of the guilty, the secrets laid bare. Boots on the gravel, truth in the dust. Spirits in the wind, who can you trust? Mike's hot, stories cold, haunt in the zone. Terrors on the podcast, the unknown's throne. Cactus spines like knives in the night. Blood red moon, something ain't right. Sebastian's voice, a lantern in the gloom. Eric's got the maps leading to the doom. Chains on the mic, rattling like ghosts. Truth, they uncover what haunts them the most. Desert don't lie, but the people might. Every tale they tell, darker than the night. Boots on the gravel, truth in the dust. Spirits in the wind, who can you trust? Mike's hot, stories cold, haunt in the zone. Terrors on the podcast, the unknown's throne. Hey, boots on the gravel, truth in the dust. Spirits in the wind, who can you trust? Mike's hot, stories cold, haunt in the zone. Terrors on the podcast, the unknown's throne. A murder unsolved, footprints in sand. Clues in the whispers, outlaws brand. Sebastian's got the word sharp as a blade. Eric's in the wish and the plans they laid. Boots on the gravel, truth in the dust. Spirits in the wind, who can you trust? Mike's hot, stories cold, haunt in the zone. Terrors on the podcast, the unknown's throne. Hey, boots on the gravel, truth in the dust. Spirits in the wind, who can you trust? Mike's hot, stories cold, haunt in the zone. Terrors on the podcast, the unknown's throne.
Good evening, ghouls and gals, freaks and creeps, and welcome back to the Terrazona podcast. And hot damn, do we got us an episode this week. We're going to be covering the Dyatlov Pass. So, apologies now, folks, that it took so long. There was, Eric, 89 different bazillion damn theories to go through and everything else. We even cut stuff in and out like
no matter
3 or 4 times.
Which place you looked for information, no theory was the same, no information was the same, everything was different takes on it. So
yeah, even if the theories and stuff were the same, nothing really coincided. Some stuff was changed differently and you never really could get a concrete answer. So we apologize, folks, for the long wait for this episode. We know it's been a minute, but trying to learn the names of this stuff too, trying to go down the almost 60-year rabbit hole.
Give or take.
Yeah, it happened in 59 and it's 2025, so that's about 61 years, 62 years?
I can't tell you, but it's been a while.
I ain't good at math. So go ahead, Eric. You can lead us in with the history of the mountain, what happened to the hikers, and then I'll come in with the back half with theories and everything else that's supposedly happened over the years.
Okay, this is a brief little history of the Ural Mountains, which they were hiking through. During the war, many individual plants were moved from Western Soviet Union to the Urals to prevent their destructions by the Germans. Mount Umatau in the southern Urals became the site of a large military complex during the Soviet era, with multiple military garrisons and possibly a bunker for leaders in case of nuclear war. This was during the time that the Soviet Union was trying to develop their nuclear weapons. After World War II, the Soviet Union established a plutonium producing facility in the southern Urals near what is now Ozerk. The region served as a military stronghold during Peter the Great's northern war with Sweden, during Stalin's rule with the, hope I'm saying this right, Magnitogorsk metallurgical complex.
Some of these I couldn't pronounce either. So
was built, and Russian industrial relocated to the Urals during the Nazi advance at the beginning of the World War II, and as a center of the Soviet nuclear race.
Klotztal, yeah, that was a hard one for me too. I had to Google how to pronounce
that. Aka the Dead Mountains, which gets its name from indigenous tribe that lives there, the Manzi. Okay, so this is where our story takes place. On the night of February, either the 1st or the 2nd, 1959, something caused the group to abruptly abandon their tent on the slopes of the Clot Sakal on what was supposed to be a 2 to 3 week hiking skiing trip. A group of 10 well-trained grade 2 hikers. At the time, grade 2 was the second highest level of hiking you could have in the Soviet Union. The hikers were going out to get their level 3, their grade 3. Hikers that attended the Ural Polytech Institute set out to reach grade 3, which at the time was the highest level you could get, and intended to cover 215 miles through the Ural Mountains. The expedition was a winter trek beginning on January 23rd, 1959. They had planned to send a message back to the sports club around the 12th of February, when they assumed they would be returning safely. The message never got there, which led to a search party being dispatched. The expedition was planned to last for 3 weeks, but sadly cut short. Okay. I'm gonna try my hardest to get these names right.
It's all right. Whatever you can't get,
But
I can get.
the 9 hikers that were found were Igor Dyatlov, Yuri Doranchenko, Ludmila Dubinina, Yuri Krovensenko, Alexander Kolatov, Zinedina Kolmogorova,
Rubson
Slobodin, Nikolai Bogali.
I cannot ever get his right. Rogalius, I think.
Rogalius, and Zemyon Zolotaryov. There was an actual 10th hiker, but due to having joint pain and heart problems, he returned back, and his name was Yuri Yudin. Some believe that severe weather could have caused them to change course. So on the night of February 1st or 2nd, the hikers are setting up camp, and at some point in the night, something caused them to hide inside the tent, but to see what was going on outside caused them to cut holes in the tent for like peepholes so they could look out and see what was outside. Whatever it was, it caused them to flee the tent in different states of undress, in a panic. Some had shoes, some just had socks, but all were running in different, some say they ran in different directions. One says they actually walked out single file, which would be kind of strange due to the fact that there's, they think something's outside and they're looking.
Because I mean, if you're cutting peepholes, that's a massive state of paranoia at that point.
Yeah. So what is scaring you so much that you're not willing to come outside of the tent?
And especially with there being 9 of you, I think you hold the numbers game. So, plus being grade 2 hikers and skiers, you figure you could use the ailments to your advantage.
And it wouldn't be something to hear something outside your tent wouldn't be a strange incident.
Yeah, especially if you
it
hike on a consistent basis.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
So here's so after they ran out, nobody knows exactly what happened, but this is how the bodies were found. Yuri Doranchenko, he was found face down in the snow wearing a short sleeved shirt, shorts, and 2 pair of socks, and no shoes. On his right side was a large burn. on the right side of his head and on his foot. There appeared to be a gray fluid coming out of his mouth. He was covered in scrapes and bruises. His eyes and ears and mouth were covered in blood. It was speculated to be self-inflicted out of agony. He was freezing to death. The gray fluid coming out of his mouth was caused by a high impact to his chest. Official cause of death was hypothermia, but the gray fluid was never brought up again.
See, wouldn't you find that kind of weird? Because I know from everything I've been watching lately, even on just other things to study for the show, every medical examiner, every police, they go through stuff like that with a fine-tooth comb. How would they overlook that? Or why would it not even be mentioned?
Well, you got to kind of wonder where did the burn come from if he died from hypothermia. Was he setting himself on fire? I seriously doubt it. Yeah. So, I mean, and to have one on the side of your head and your foot.
Those are very odd places to have a burn.
Okay, the second person was Yuri Krovinchenko. Was found near Yuri. He was found in long sleeve shirt and socks. His body heavily bruised with multiple cuts. Burns were found as well on his foot, upper leg, both hands. A chunk of his own knuckle was found in his mouth. They say maybe he was biting on it to keep himself awake since he was out in the cold.
Probably from going into
shock.
Yeah.
Both of these bodies were moved after death, possibly by other survivors as a sign of respect. They may have taken some of the clothes to divide among the other survivors to keep warm, which could be a possibility because it doesn't really say how long in between each person, whatever happened to them, happened. You know, it doesn't say it was 5 minutes, then this person, then this person. It wasn't like a real fast sequence. It just says that these bodies were found in different states of dress, different kinds of injuries, and different states of decomp and things like that.
What's weird is a lot of, because I'm into all those medical examiner shows and now I'm a sicko, with all those being in the cold, even with frostbite, hypothermia, things like that, it would slow down a lot of the post-mortem. So I think a lot of stuff happened and they just flat out said, nope, let's just put that under the rug, keep shit, hush hush.
It's a possibility. Okay, Igor
Dyatlov,
leader of the group, was found face up, hands clenched. Body also moved post-mortem. He had bruises and cuts on both knuckles, his face, and one of his incisors was taken out of his mouth. The coroner said these were from a fist fight. Official cause of death, hypothermia.
Yeah, because hypothermia goes and pulls your teeth out of your mouth. That's one thing that has never sat well with me reading this whole thing. It seems like such a cop-out answer for hypothermia.
Yeah. Well, hypothermia, most people, you freeze. These people have all these injuries, cuts on his knuckles, cuts on his face, a tooth had been pulled. Medical examiners saying it looked like he was in a fight, but he died of hypothermia, which has always been like the main mystery that everybody's always wondered what really happened. Why? Because most people don't really believe that hypothermia was.
I didn't. Even just reading
I mean, just reading these, the whole hypothermia theories kind of, for me, goes out the window.
Yep. I didn't even give it a pot to piss in. As soon as I heard that, I'm like, dude, this is so retarded. That is the most BS cop out answer, period.
You know, like I said, when you have people saying, you know, they're coughing up a gray fluid because it's a traumatic blunt force trauma to the chest, obviously that probably would be the reason they passed, not hypothermia.
Yeah, because I forgot what the actual fluid's called. I Googled it, but they do explain it's normally from high impacts. They're saying it takes almost like airbag pressure, a car accident, or I think they said like being hit with something over 100 pounds at, I think the velocity they said of like 50 to 60. So what are they going to find that can swing dynamite like that, especially out in the open?
Hypothermia cause those injuries?
Yeah, it can't. That's the
mystery. Next, the next hiker was Zenadina Kolomogova. First woman found was dressed better than the others. One of her sweaters had the right sleeve torn off. She had abrasions on her hands, bruises on her face, a long bruise on the side of her body that looked like she had been hit with a baton. These injuries show sign of potential struggle. Official cause of death, hypothermia due to violent accident.
Wait, how does that work?
Maybe due to the fact that because she couldn't move, she was stuck in the snow.
Okay, because I'm like, hypothermia caused to an accident? Like,
Due to violent accident, which
yeah,
means
last I checked, violent accidents don't cause hypothermia.
What happened to her caused her to be stuck in the snow, which would cause hypothermia. Okay.
I hated the way that was phrased. I read that over and over. I'm like, that sounds straight ignorant.
It said they say that Kolomogova and Dyatlov tried to return to camp, which means they felt safe.
That could have been a reason.
Or maybe just trying to get out of the snow.
I wonder if they maybe even looked for other survivors. Figure you keep your number up, better chances of survival.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. I mean, just knowing that they were trying to return to camp says that they felt the threat of whatever
the threat level had to have decreased at least some.
They felt like it was safe and it'd be okay to go back. Which means the whole thing started, there was a catalyst for what caused them all to run out of the tent.
That's just wild.
Which means that they felt that whatever that was no longer at camp, that they could return back. Okay, the next hiker was Rostim
Slobodin.
Was found March 5th, lying face down and covered in snow. He had internal bleeding in both temples and a large skull fracture. Whatever caused the fracture and hemorrhaging is unclear. He likely survived about an hour after the injury, becoming disoriented and collapsing onto the ground. Still awake, he died quickly of hypothermia. So once again, it falls in line with Zenadina, where due to the fact that there was a violent act against them, they collapsed in the snow, hypothermia set in.
Dude, that would be absolutely just fucking terrifying, dude. Think about it. You're basically conscious, but not conscious enough
to do something,
and
to save yourself.
Yeah, and you're just laying there like, damn, I'm dying, because you know you're in fight or flight mode, but because of everything going on, like your brain's basically telling your body shut down, and you're just stuck laying there. Imagine the fear in that dude's like
His body also showed that he was moved post-mortem. Months went by until a member of the Mansi tribe discovered a den created by the 4 surviving hikers in a last-ditch effort to survive. However, it was unsuccessful.
So they built not an igloo, but like some kind of a
Just
snow
dug.
den thing.
Just dug into the snow to build some kind of a shelter, hoping that they could survive. But as we all know, they all came to a horrific fate.
Something that kind of bothers me, and I've thought a lot about it, is with you being experienced hikers, why would you just pop your tent out in the middle of the open? Like, you're surrounded by trees and forest, but why out in the middle of the snow? No cover, any kind of an avalanche. You're safer in the trees because the trees will veer the snow off into different directions. You can weave through the trees to save yourself from an avalanche, because that is a theory. We'll touch on that later.
Just the sheer fact it shields you from the elements.
Yeah,
to be in the
exactly.
tree line. But maybe there was a reason why they stayed away.
Yeah, I just always found that kind of interesting. With all your hiking knowledge and prowess, you're like, well, let's just throw that away today and camp out in the open where we can possibly freeze to death.
That also falls in line with why they were cutting holes, looking through. Maybe there was something that they noticed going on in the trees, so they figured being out in the open would be safer than to be caught in the trees.
Yeah, I mean, if you're out in the open, you have the best vantage point because you can see everything. But
So
it also puts you in a little bit of a pickle because you give up any kind of cover, any kind of maneuverability. And plus the snow is going to slow you down. You got to march through however deep the snow is.
it's something that maybe someday they'll figure out what the whole reason was why they were out in the open instead of kind of getting shelter from the trees.
Yeah. That's an interesting one on me.
The next body found belonged to Ludmila Dabinina. Her body was found draped over a natural ledge with water flowing next to her body. Tissues around her mouth and lips were missing, exposing her teeth and upper jaw. Soft tissue was also missing in other parts of her face, revealing her cheekbone in one area. 10 of her ribs were broken. Massive hemorrhaging had occurred in her heart. Both eye sockets were empty due to the eyes missing. These weren't the only thing missing. Her tongue was also missing and nowhere to be found. The blood found in her stomach determined that her tongue had been removed, cut out, bit off while she was still alive. Her cause of death was ruled hemorrhaging into the right atrium of the heart, making one of the only deaths to officially be ruled something other than hypothermia. So she was the only one who actually was said died due to the injuries that she had. Nothing to do with hypothermia.
See, that makes no sense, but
Because you figure, look at all the other hikers that they found, all sustained substantial damage to the body. The trauma that caused the person to for the gray fluid to come out of their mouth, burns, knuckles cut and scrapes on faces, abrasions, bruises,
a skull fracture.
All of these things happen, but hypothermia is the cause of death.
Yeah.
So basically, they're saying they were all beaten and left in the snow. If I'm to make an assumption that hypothermia killed them all, and you hear all of what happened to them, I would assume that they were beaten, left in the snow, and hypothermia took them.
I don't know how they would have survived most of those injuries because, well, a skull fracture possible, but if you crack the skull, the question is there any internal bleeding? Because really, that's what kills you if you have a skull fracture. It's the internal bleeding.
Yeah. So from what they said, it was a skull fracture, almost one whole side of the head.
Oh damn!
Let's see. Okay. Semyon Zolotaryov, the oldest member of the group, was found slightly more prepared for the elements than the others. He had 3 pair of pants on. He wore a long jacket over his sweater. He had a hat and a scarf and boots. Excuse me. Despite him having some preparation for the cold, he too perished mysteriously, suffering injuries to his chest, 5 broken ribs, and another injury to his chest. He was missing tissue along his right eyebrow, which revealed his skull bone. He had a deep gash in the back of his head, revealing blood. His eyes were missing. His death was quickly ruled hypothermia, despite the strange, unexplained injuries he suffered. Once again, it brings us back to everything that happened to these hikers, to their bodies, but hypothermia is the cause of death.
Yeah, it doesn't sit. Anyone who's listening to this or even slightly knows about the case could throw hypothermia right the hell out of the window.
Yeah, like I said, if they're saying hypothermia was the cause, like I said, for me, it would be due to the fact that they sustained all these injuries and were left there. And then they were so that's saying they were still alive after sustaining the injuries and slowly died due to hypothermia. Which, if you really think about it, sounds pretty far-fetched. But
I wouldn't believe it at all. I'm just like, bruh.
Okay. Zolotaryov and Dabamina both suffered their massive chest injuries while still alive. Medical experts concluded their injuries were caused by a large force and could not have been caused by another human. The internal injuries were similar to something you would see from a car accident, but neither showed any bruising marks where the force would have hit. This point alone continues to baffle researchers and remains unexplained how this could even be possible. So basically they're saying that these people took all these severe hits, but no marks on the body of where the impact was.
I was about to say, so there's no like tissue damage, no bruising, no, it's just
most
like
of the bruisings and stuff they said if there was, were, from what I've been reading, is very minimum, around like the faces maybe. But as far as the real traumatic blows that were breaking ribs and causing internal damage and stuff, never once did they say there was bruising or showed impact.
See, that's bizarre in itself because, I mean, even if you get hit, like playing football, prime example, you get hit in the shoulder, hit in the chest, even though you're wearing your pads, after a while you'll see bruising because it damages the outer tissue. Like now the blood needs somewhere to go.
Yeah, it shows impact.
So to not show anything, not even tissue damage or an abrasion, it's kind of dumbfounding.
It says it continues to baffle the researchers. So obviously,
sure baffled us.
Those who have been, trying to find the answers are still can't explain how that's possible. Okay, Alexander Kolovtov was found near the den with the others. His clothes were in better condition than most of the others. He had minor rips and tears in his pants and his jacket. Burn marks were found on his jacket and his socks. Both eyebrows were missing, and you could see the bones where they had been. His nose was broken. His neck was disformed, meaning most likely it was snapped. He had a gash was found behind his right ear. Despite clear signs of major struggle, the autopsy was left vague and concluded he died from hypothermia. The vagueness of the autopsy was consistent with the remaining victims found in May of the year. Little explanation was given to any of their injuries, and the autopsies were found to be very misleading.
So, quick question. There was a gap between the first, I think it's 3, and then when they found the rest. So, they were found in like February, and I think you said the other 2 weren't found till like, what, May or March? So, it's like, what, like a 2-month gap that they were, I don't want to say frozen, but...
No, because it was in February. They were should have been back by February 12th.
Hmm.
So from February to March, so about a month or so they found in between finding all the bodies.
Okay, so there's a month gap between the first 3 and then like what, the other 5?
The first 4 or 5, and then the last 4.
That's wild, dude.
1, 2, 3, 4. Oh no, the first 4 and then the last 5.
Man, that's just wild, dude.
Okay. I'm assuming the last body found is Nikolai Grigoli, who was prepared for the elements. Zolotarov and Brioli were believed to be outside the tent when the others fled, which could be why they were prepared for the cold. Brignoli was found with bruising on his lips and lower left side of his face. He bled eternally on his right forearm. Also, his skull was fractured and cracked all over the left side of his head. It would have taken extremely powerful force, but no damage was done to the soft tissue on the top of the fracture, meaning again, no human could have inflicted these injuries. He probably would have been unconscious and died within 3 hours. His death, too, was officially blamed by a powerful force that could not have been caused by a human. Okay, here's something that I don't get. They're saying that Zolotaryov and Brignoli were both outside the tent. Why were the other 7 inside the tent scared and cutting holes to look through it? And they're standing outside.
Mm-hmm. Only thing I could kind of, shitting in the wind here. Only thing I could think of, they were the only 2, let's just say, even brave enough to be like, hey, hold on. Let us scout, see what's going on. And we'll let you guys know what's up. But keep an eye out on us, while we're walking around. We'll signal or yell something. That could be my only explanation.
But what
that's
would
even
cause,
feasible.
Then what did Zolotaryov and Bergolny see that caused them to run that would cause everybody else to run?
Yeah, that would be my only thing. And why would you run the same direction they're going? Clearly, that's danger. You hightail it somewhere else. So,
and everybody, and from what I'm getting, everybody ran out, straight from the tent, straight out. Nobody, they weren't like these 2 guys running off to the side. Everybody went straight. So what did they see that caused them to run, which would cause everybody else to run?
Yeah, if you're running just straight ahead, so obviously the threat is behind you. So I wonder if that's what. So let's just say Zolotarov and Bogoli, they're out in the front. They're like, yo, and then they take off running, and everybody else follows behind them, wouldn't you already be at a disadvantage? Because whatever is getting there, it's approaching.
Maybe
So-
something came out of just as theories, as many theories that this story has. Something came out of the woods, and they saw it. Everybody, and they took off running, so everybody else just took off running.
Yeah, interesting tidbit. So, you see how they cut peepholes? There's actual. It's documented that they ripped the whole tent inside out, cut it from the inside out to get out.
Okay, so once again, what happened? What is the catalyst for all of this?
And not only that, why would you give up like your only source of any kind of shelter? Because clearly you're not in the tree lines where you could cut wood, make a little makeshift fire. You're completely at the mercy of the elements at this point. And then, of course, whatever puts you in fight or flight mode.
Guess it's one of the theories and mysteries that we will hopefully will someday be able to find out.
Yeah, definitely. It was a pain.
Okay, all of the deaths of the Dyatlov Pass seemed suspicious. All the hikers had bruising and cuts on their bodies, specifically on their faces. Most had other shocking and disturbing injuries that were left unexplained. One of the more shocking things revealed in the case has yet to be discussed is this view. It is believed that the last hikers had taken clothes from some of the other bodies after they died in a desperate attempt to survive freezing cold weather. When the last 4 bodies were found, they were all wearing clothes from others who died before them. It was discovered trace amounts of radiation on their clothing, adding to the radiation was also detected in the entire area of the Dyatlov Pass at the time. It's believed that there is no natural way this radiation could have been found on the bodies, but an explanation how it got there has never been given. Looking at these deaths as a whole, no part of the situation makes any sense, from the ripping open of the tent to the single file walk down the mountain to horrific injuries and finally the radiation. Everything just seems off, which is why this case has been one of the most mysterious of all time. Due to its popularity and widespread appeal, thousands of theories have been put out there as to what caused this, which we've kind of discussed, that there are many theories, unknown answers, from what had happened to their different states of undress, to their injuries, to how the injuries happened and weren't showing the impact, to every one of them, even though having extreme trauma to the body, hypothermia is their cause of death. So many theories.
So I'm going to get into some of the theories that we were able to find here, folks, which they were many. Some of them I even left out because otherwise this damn show would be almost 8.5 hours long. It was just absolutely, utterly ridiculous. So one of the earliest theories, and what a lot of people said was the most feasible at the time, is that the local Mansi tribe murdered the Dyatlov Pass hikers, which really doesn't make a whole lot of sense because people who knew about the Mansi tribe and stuff like that normally said they're very peaceful people. They're not very, I don't want to say savage, but they're not very aggressive. They're very welcoming of strangers. Dyatlov and his group even spent some time with the Mansi for a day or so before they continued on their expedition. So clearly they're not really interested in being violent. But with that being said, they also found, I hope I'm saying this right, it's chungs, I believe it's tomes, that are these weird like stick figure altar things with like a moose head or a deer head that's built up and put out for like the time of a sacrifice. It's very symbolic, very ritualistic, that kind of thing. So some people believe that the hikers may have ignored these signs and walked into places that they shouldn't have been during a time they shouldn't have been at. So that was just one of the theories, that even though the Mansi weren't violent, but because they felt disrespected, it's still their land entirely. So the next theory, stupidest theory, avalanche. An avalanche is what killed the Dyatlov Pass hikers. It's self-explanatory. There's really nothing you can say other than, yeah, it was an avalanche. But doing the research on this, to kind of go with this whole avalanche theory, they said that the Dyatlov Pass hikers built a weird snow wall that kind of went like that and plateaued off. So what it is they built their tent basically right here under the little snow wall. So I forgot exactly what they called the hut thing, but anyways, so as the snow keeps going over the top, and then the wind would just build it up and build it up and build it up because it's blocking the snow, the wall gave way, and then that's what created the avalanche, which I already kind of threw that theory out the window because, like we've already read, there are 9 experienced hikers. They would not do something dumb enough where they're like, oh, hey, let's build something that could possibly come down on top of us or this whole mountain.
Okay, the whole avalanche theory for me doesn't make sense, because if it was an avalanche, they wouldn't have gotten very far. Running out, the avalanche would have just covered them.
Yep.
Where did all the eyeballs missing, tongues missing, broken ribs?
Not only that, how were you able to find their tent? Because the tent is found. We'll put the pictures up in the show. We'll fix it in editing so you guys can see. We have pictures of all 9 hikers. Some other stuff that ties in with some of these other theories. So you'll see that they found the tent, and it's almost in perfect height where you could literally just like, it's maybe in like this much snow where you can just like, and then put it back somewhere else. So that whole avalanche theory, absolutely retarded. And like continuing on with the whole avalanche thing, like they, I forgot the documentary. I've watched so much stuff on this thing now, that they had professional, what are people who study weather? Meteorologists tried to say that, yeah, it was an avalanche. They had high avalanche warning signs and all this other stuff. You went through and looked at the actual timeline. Not one thing mentions an avalanche. Not in any books. Not even if you looked back at 1945's weather report. So that means these other people were kind of BSing too. That there is not even a hint of an avalanche was detected or on during that day.
Well, with doing the studying and stuff, it also says that the area that they were in, it's avalanches are not common.
Exactly. So I'm like, dude, really? Like, why you capping, bruh? Like, it's straight nonsense. And like, it's weird because I read somewhere else that they have just prepped a meal. So their meal is completely fresh. So whenever caused them to leave, they said that as they were recovering all the evidence from the tent, that food was prepped. Because remember, it was the 1st or 2nd, and they didn't show up till like what, the 10th with the search party.
They had been missing 2-3 weeks.
Okay. So obviously the food's cold, but the tent hasn't been moved or anything since. So they can still see where everything was prepped and they were getting ready to eat when whatever happened caused them all to take off. And what, like, I want to know too, if you're all camping, like, I get it, you're friends, you know, but with 2 females and, you know, 7 dudes, why would all you guys be like undressing in the same tent? Like, wouldn't you kind of ask them to, like, you know, hey, you guys step out for us to change?
Could be.
That's one thing that kind of felt weird. But, anyways, moving on with some other theories. So, other than this stupid avalanche, this one, my nephew, or our nephew, told us to check out this documentary called The Yeti Massacre. And man, did that open up a huge rabbit hole. So that was actually an original theory that a Russian Yeti could have attacked and killed the hikers. There's one picture that I actually have in the show, and we'll put it up here. It's called Photograph 17. And I believe in the picture it's Ludmila and I believe Zolotorov. And I don't know who's snapping the picture, but you'll see that there's somebody like that, like peering at a tree. And it's been 100% corroborated, no kind of alteration, nothing. It is 100% authentic,
And the image
never
is
touched.
what most people, the common consensus of what the Yeti, the Bigfoot, Sasquatch looks like.
Yep. And what's crazy is somebody did an actual measurement between height and tree. So they're saying this tree is, you know, a couple hundred feet in the air. It's big ass tree. The person standing is like middle of the bark. So they're saying this person is between 7.5 feet to 8.5 feet tall. And that's standing on foot to the center of the tree. So that means the Dyatlov Pass hikers are barely 5 something, and even let's just say at their tallest 6 feet. You're still
Almost 2.5
feet
feet
shorter than whatever is stalking you, if that is what
if
it
the
was.
Yeti is the what really happened.
Yeah, it's
Because when we did the episode on the cryptids, and we did Sasquatch, it says that they will attack to defend their territory. So if it felt like them being there was invading their territory, they would have attacked them.
Yep, there's more to this whole Yeti theory. So apparently the Manseys, not only just did they build the tombs of this time of sacrifice, they actually have markings on trees that they carve in them themselves that are, they believe in Yeti. I forgot what the word they use for it is, but it's like the muck.
Menk.
Thank you. Sorry if we're offending any Russian listeners. Like, we're Americans. There's no way we were gonna pronounce these pitch perfect. You know, your guys' sounds are completely different from ours. So, with that being said, they believe that these markers were like, hey, don't trespass here, don't go here, don't go here, don't go here. So, they actually sanctioned off part of their land to the Yetis. Maybe the hikers didn't see the markers, or they ignored the markers. It could possibly be it.
Also, when we were doing the research, it also said that they have believed in these, that Mansi have been there for thousands of years, and they have believed in the Yeti
Since the ancient times.
since the beginning. So
And
for
the
them
Ural
to
Mountains are a couple 100,000 years old too.
and then for them to put up the markers and stuff would not be uncommon or out of character, since they believed that the Yeti was real.
Yeah, it's like a lot of it's like very typical Native American folklore too. Like they put up markers and stuff like that to ward off like skinwalkers and pugwudgies and stuff. So a yeti wouldn't be too far off from, or their markers to show their land wouldn't be too far off from the same concept. So here's a theory, folks, that is literally out of this world. UFOs were, or aliens were another possible theory that went on with this. So as the Dyatlov Pass hikers were going up towards the Urals, there was another group of hikers, I believe it was about 3 or 4, were coming down, so past them as they're heading up. They even told them, hey, be careful, we saw some weird lights in the sky around where you guys are heading. So there's also photos of Zemlyan's camera that has some of these lights. We'll also have those pictures in here, folks. We'll send them up in here so you can see them. There are also lights that Zemlyan caught in the forest not too far, or not really the forest, but the overhead of the forest, with flickering lights and other lights in the sky that are captured in some of these footages.
I was seeing here that it says that the Mansi claimed that the lights look like glowing spheres, and which match modern day descriptions of UFOs. This theory for me is probably up there with the avalanche.
Yeah, you can
what would cause these supposed aliens to beat these people to death, basically?
I mean, this is coming from a guy who loves fire in the sky. So let's just say they were trying to take one of them. Okay? Maybe they're actually out of the ship, whatever. They touch down. They're trying to see what's going on. They try to grab one of the hikers, out of fear. They're like, nah, bitch. Boom. Hit the alien. Squabble turns out. And then now it's not about abducting or taking or whatever experiments. Now it's a survival thing. Because we don't really know if we are physically more superior than quote-unquote aliens. We just know they're more technologically advanced, because that's all they ever say is they're technologically advanced. They don't say shit about how physically strong they are, if they can even outmuscle an infant. Let's just say that they're baby butt soft. You know what I'm saying? So, but I get what you're going at, dude. Like, I'm picking up what you're putting down. That whole alien theory just... And this is coming from people who actually talk about aliens and ghosts and everything else. It just seems so far-fetched. Like, why these 9 random hikers? Well, I mean, I can't say anything. Just like, look at the Travis Walton thing too. Well, he was abducted. Just why?
It's always going to come back to what were they hiding? What were they? For me, it seems like they were hiding from something inside the tent that caused them to cut the thing so they could look through the tent. Were these aliens out there? Is that what they saw? When they took off running? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm
not going to be the guy who's like, aliens aren't real.
I'm just saying...
I have to see aliens. I've never even seen UFO light in the skies. So I think if I could see something like that with my eyes, I would be a little bit more believable,
like I said, it says is that the pictures are of glowing spheres. That could be many things. Could be a flare in the distance, testing a weapon of some kind, missiles, fireworks. I mean, I'm pretty sure there weren't fireworks going on while they were there, but I'm just saying it could be...
It's funny you say
many a thing.
Weapons and missiles. We're going to touch on that. So another kind of weird thing is it's this thing called paradoxical undressing. So basically, it's from from how Google described it, medical examiners, it's basically you're suffering from hypothermia, but your brain and your body are like they feel almost like they're in a furnace instead of freezing. You feel like you're burning up. So your body is in a it's a fight or flight to cool off. So that's why they were in other states of undress. They stripped off trying to in their mind cool off. So to me, I'm just like
Even if that was to happen, the question is always, where did all the trauma to the bodies come from?
right?
There's no, until you can answer that question, I don't think any question will ever be answered.
Like here's some more stuff about paradoxical undressing. So apparently it can cause you to have memory loss. I got that right now. Memory loss, slurred speech, confusion, states of hilaria, states of panic, delusion, paranoia. And there's also this other weird kind of theory. I hope I can say this right. It's a Karman vortex or Karman vortex. So what this is, it's basically an ultra low frequency that almost like paradoxing, it puts you in a state of panic, paranoia, hysteria, stuff like that. And it just maybe that's what caused the panic for the hikers to just barrel out of the
Maybe
tent.
here could be a theory. The paradoxical undressing and this Karman vortex causes panic attacks, hallucinations, all that kind of stuff. Maybe due to that's one of them. One of the hikers was the one.
Just pulled a Michael Myers on them because
Yeah.
of all this.
But then it comes
They
down
say
to
the Urals because the way they're funneled, or at the altitude something
But,
is where
okay,
they can
well,
get this. It's in the wind.
with
Apparently.
saying, well, thinking that doesn't make sense. I'll even though it was a theory that I was coming up with, doesn't make sense due to the fact that they all died with similar injuries. How would the last person sustain the injuries?
I saw where you were going with it because it would make sense for a lot of like the skull fractures.
Maybe they were just hallucinating when they ran out and something happened.
Yeah, because apparently this vortex thing, it's in the wind. The wind carries the low frequency, the hum. But if that was the case, why not the hikers who were coming down from the mountains? Why did they not experience it? Remember, as they're coming, they're going when they were talking about the lights in the sky. So why is it these people were perfectly normal, had no paranoia, no states of hysteria, delirium, none of that. They were all perfectly
Same
A-okay.
with the search party.
Yeah. They would all be cannibalizing each other or killing each other or flipping the fuck out. So that whole vortex, like at first I thought the same thing, like, well, maybe that's feasible. But then it still doesn't account for those weird, bizarre injuries with like no damage to the tissue. Because if I'm hitting you, I'm leaving marks on your face. And you'll see marks on your hands and your knuckles from a physical altercation. So that kind of took away from the whole vortex theory thing.
That's
to
what makes them
after
theories.
that. Yep. So, yeah. Well, in an interesting turn of events, another reason this episode took forever, in the middle of us actually doing all the investigating and reading up on stuff, Josh Gates from like Expedition Unknown and Destination X and all that stuff. So he took a trip up to Dyatlov Pass to pay respects to the hikers, stops by their graves and all that stuff. Well, on his way back, I forgot the town. He gets a call from an investigator named Yuri Kutsevich. I hope I'm saying his name right. And he introduced Josh to a guy named Oleg Archiplov, who gives him actual letters from the widow of the lead investigator at that time. And what he says is the investigator's name was Versely Ivanovich. He was the chief prosecutor of the region at the time. So the Soviets launched an investigation on the 21st of the 59th. That's nearly 10 days after the hikers were due to be back. So when we were reading the document, the date was actually February 15th. So they knew almost 11 days that they were still already out there and dead. And they falsified the timeline to start the investigation to look for the Dyatlov Pass hikers. So in 2005, they decided to reopen the case. And in the middle of doing that, that all happened just about 4 months ago. So that's another reason this episode took so long, folks. We were right in the middle of it, and then boom, smack dab in the middle, they decide to reopen the case, and all this stuff comes out. So, not only just adding to that, on March 2005, 66 years later, after everything else, new information comes to the light. A witness actually decides to break their silence. So, there was a not a Nazi officer, a Soviet officer. He was a junior grunt in 1959, and he was stationed about 50 miles away from the Ural Mountain Pass. So he's not too far from Dyatlov and them. He actually recalls seeing military garrisons, so the trucks, all their loading equipments, the Humvees, marching up towards the Ural Mountains. And he was told not to say anything. But comes out some time later, he admits that they were testing some kind of a sound weapon. He doesn't really specify if it was a low frequency weapon or like a high sound wave weapon, just that they were testing some kind of a audio wave weapon. And what he describes is the kinetic force of these sound waves could cause a lot of the injuries. Crush ribs, make your fucking brain explode in your head, and all kinds of crazy stuff. So, what if the Dyatlov Pass hikers, in the middle of them testing this weapon, may have kind of stumbled on it by accident?
But you have to wonder, was it happening? Is that what caused them to run out of the tent? The sound.
Yeah, it kind of goes. What if that vortex thing wasn't caused by the wind, caused by this Soviet secret weapon? Because you figure this is 59, so we're what, like right at the peak of the Cold War, or just getting ready to start the Cold War?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I love military and history stuff, but I was never good with anything past that. So, yeah, it's definitely pretty crazy. So, with that being said, too, another pretty strange thing is the family of the Dyatlov Pass incident when they were conducting their funeral services. Some of the ones who were exposed to high levels of radiation said their skin almost took on an orangey glow. and their hair was actually changing to a gray or a white-ish color. That can't be confirmed nor denied because some people have said the same thing, like that's not true, and then other families were like, no, it is true. And then yeah, this whole past thing was just absolutely weird. There are more theories, guys. Hold on, we're gonna keep this rolling. Roll with us for a minute. So not only that, apparently Joseph Stalin heard that, this goes back to Yeti, guys, found a live Yeti. And the Soviets, a couple years before, in the Urals, found one. And they were going to try and bring it back and test it and all this other stuff. See if they can, I don't want to say domesticate because that's not a good word, but more weaponize it. Train it like a soldier, have it follow orders, kind of break its will, and then have that be the Crimson Army, like, super weapon. Well, I guess when they were trying to bring it on train, a Soviet guard went to a little too close and it grabbed him and it started choking him through the bars. It reached his arms around him and had him by the neck. So he pulled his service weapon and shot this Yeti in the head. So, of course, years before, the dude's like, what did you just do? Like, do you realize what you cost us? So Stalin wanted to genetically create a Yeti. So he was actually doing artificial insemination in the early, like, 60s, 59, so between 54 to 59-ish, because that's when this happened. So he's crossbreeding regular women with ape semen to create an army of Yetis. And this has been kind of proven at this point that that was actually going on. And what they wanted to do was essentially create a crimson army of weaponized Yetis, trained like soldiers, taught to fight like soldiers in a group, but able to be domesticated, like kind of like a house pet, where you could tell them what to do.
Gross.
Yeah, the fact that the ladies volunteered to be inseminated with monkey spunk, yeah, that's pretty gross. But I mean, what else could you do at that time if you defied, the Crimson Army? Like, that was kind of a bad choice at that time. So that's another theory. Another one is that Semyon was not who he says he was. Apparently, another theory is Semyon was a KGB plant. That I guess his brother, and this is in another documentary and some other stuff that's been kind of archived, his brother was collaborating with Nazi Germany at the time. Well, sometime later, Soviet Union found out that, he was a defector. Gave him the good old dirt nap, and then they kind of kept this on Semyon.
But what was the point of planting him with the hikers?
So, here's the thing. Apparently, Soviet Union was still doing missile testing, rocket testing, weapon testing, all at the Urals. The Urals were supposed to be like this hidden off in the distance because nobody really goes up there. So apparently, Klot Sahad and all that, it's like super desolate. The nearest thing anywhere close to there is the little Nancy
basically
village.
He was there to make sure they just didn't get any information.
They say that, or he was there to lead them to this experiment, and that he knew one way or another he wasn't going to make it. Because if this KGB theory comes to be the most accurate, he's an expendable asset. Because all you're doing, if you look at the pictures that Semyon takes, he's very far away. The hikers are like way over there, or he's taking pictures of, like, as they're trudging through the snow, he's taking pictures behind them. There's hardly any group photos where he's in them, and when you do see them, I think there's only 2 or 3 where he's like kind of smiling and looks happy, and then other times he looks like just bummed the hell out, like he doesn't even really want to be there. And what's weird, he didn't know the other hikers. Leading up into the expedition, they had no idea who the hell Zemnon even was. But he's like, hey, let me be part of your expedition. I like basically beating down the door to really want to go with them on the excursion, which is weird. And he's 38. He's almost 10 years older than majority of the Dyatlov Pass hikers. So why, in my eyes, would you want to be with, one, a bunch of kids you don't even know, and then why is it so important that you had to be there?
That's why I said
It's a
you know,
head
what was
scratcher.
the point of, there had to been a point for them to want him to go with them.
So my opinion is, if he was his KGB spy and what if they were guinea pigs for this weapon or this Yeti super clone army thing? What if that was part of the whole thing? They wanted to have all these explosions and stuff going on, rattle the Yetis up, let them go.
Yeah,
And then
could
just
be.
see.
The military does a lot of crazy stuff.
Yep. So there's that. There's just way more other theories than even this one, but these were just the ones that we thought you folks would want to hear the most, seem the most feasible. We recommend, if you guys do want to continue reading into Dyatlov, there's a lot of good documentaries on YouTube. There's a lot of good ones on Max. Max is where we saw the Killer Yeti, where we got some of this information from, that my nephew recommended. So there's tons of good stuff out there, folks. And there's a website as well called dyatlovpass.com. They do like a huge deep dive. You get all the authentic black and white photos that are from the film rails, all that stuff from the hikers. So if you are interested in that, I would ship you on that way. So that's pretty much as we could find out about the Dyatlov Pass. It'll probably always be a what if, what happened, probably always end up
There's
being
always
a
going
mystery.
to be tons of theories, tons of explanations, unanswered questions. I personally don't think it'll probably ever be solved.
Nope. I don't think we're any closer now than when we started 60-some years ago. I think we're probably even more in the dark now. Plus, with technology that we have now, you can go back and look at weather. You can thermographs to look down in the snow and all this other stuff. Kind of another little interesting tidbit is, apparently in it was either 40s, 45, 48, there was a nuclear facility built just 5 miles out of the Urals, and it had a nuclear meltdown. Soviet Union and the CIA covered it up, which
Maybe
could explain
the
some of the trace radiation.
on their clothes.
And I believe it was Yuri Durashenko or Kurvishenko, and I believe Alexander also worked at a nuclear facility site. But it's still, even if, depending on where they did,
probably wouldn't have enough radiation on them to cover everybody.
yeah, and they said the whole area had trace levels of radiation. Dude, some other crazy stuff I forgot to touch on, folks. The Yuri Durashenko and Kurvishenko, the trees they were found by, there were traces of a small fire that they built, maybe to keep themselves warm. And if you look at the trees, there's branches that were about 8-9 feet up that were pulled off and snapped. So whatever was there, they tried to climb and get away from it. It was so bad that you could see that there were finger, like skin from their fingers and blood that has frozen to the trees. They were in that big of a panic to get away from whatever the hell was going on. So, yeah, and the last piece of news, folks, to kind of touch on is the only hiker who didn't go, Yuri Yudin. Sadly, he passed away in 2013, and he is sadly just like us, still trying to get the answer to what happened to, his comrades on the Dyatlov Pass. So, definitely one of those ones. So, with that being said, folks, we're gonna close on out with Eric. You got any closing thoughts?
If you found this interesting, take a look. There's tons and tons of theories. You can make your own decisions. Heck, even make your own theory on what you believe it happened. But as always, hit the like, hit the subscribe.
Yep, and hopefully, folks, at one point in time, hopefully we can get some kind of a concrete answer, because 9 people lost their lives, and I think not only do we want answers, I think the family deserve answers too.
Most definitely.
And they should have something actually real, not your loved one died from a fake avalanche or some fake hypothermia, knowing how they passed away. So hopefully they can get the answers, as well as everybody get some actual straight answers. And with that being said, folks, good fright and good night.
Mike check, Sebastian and Eric in the cut. Terrazona tales, bodies in the dust. Desert nights cold, secrets in the breeze. Can't do shadows hide the wickedest deeds. Terrazona where the ghosts still roam. True crime whispers on a microphone. Paranormal vibes chill you to the bone. Eric and Sebastian make the unknown known. Hood tales unravel, dark webs we weave. Mysteries the currency you wouldn't believe. Blood on the sand, footprints in the dark. Every episode hits like a shot to the heart. Static in the air, spirits creeping through. Headphones blasting, truth cuts you in two. Shadows in the booth, haunted by the sound. Terrazona podcast, the illest around. Terrazona where the ghosts still roam. True crime whispers on a microphone. Paranormal vibes chill you to the bone. Eric and Sebastian make the unknown known. A killer on the loose, fingerprints erased. Voices from the grave leaving clues misplaced. Desert heat boiling, the tension never ends. Terrazona tracks what the world won't defend.